الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. أما بعد, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala tells us in His glorious book in Surah Fussilat, chapter 41 in verse 3, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كتاب فصلت آياته قرآنا عربيا لقوم يعلمون. A book whose verses have been detailed, an Arabic Quran for a people who know. Now the Quran is Allah's words. It's the guidance for man. It's our operation manual, if you will. And it has very detailed instructions to help us go through this life safely and to achieve paradise, inshallah. So there are many concepts in the Quran, many terms and many verses that the simple-minded person can understand at their level, and a deep knowledge scholar will understand at their level. So that's one of the miracles of the Quran. It can be understood on so many levels. And because it's the word of the Creator, the meanings behind it never end. So the more knowledge you have, the more meaning you get out of the verses. And inshallah, I want to touch upon some of those meanings, some examples of that today. So in here it says, Qur'an and Arabiyan. It's revealed in Arabic. I mean, yes, the Quran is in Arabic, but what the verse is alluding to is you understand Allah's commands and Allah's words using the Arabic language and its rules as defined at the time of revelation. So that's why scholars have to go back and study Arabic, and they have to go back and get very strong in Arabic before they can start getting some of those deep meanings out. And this is not available to the rest of us. I mean, a lot of us may know it at a very superficial level. And that's why we go to these scholars to get some of these meanings and benefit from them. But just when Allah says it's a Quran in Arabic, yes, the obvious meaning, it's an Arabic Quran. But there's more to it. That you cannot just explain it willy-nilly. You have to go back to the Arabic language, to the grammar, how the grammar is built, because every letter, every vowel, there's no addition or anything surplus to the words. When Allah puts a vowel in there, there's a reason behind it. If there's a word in there, there's a reason behind it. So we have to understand it that way. So Arabic is a very rich and precise language, and Allah chose it for his final message to man. So some of these verses I want to go through that have meanings that maybe you know, maybe you don't. So inshallah for benefit. In Surah Al-Waqi'ah, in chapter 56, verse 17, Allah says, يَطُوفُ عَلَيْهِمْ وِلْدَانٌ مُخَلَّدُونَ, describing the state of people in heaven, that there will circulate among them young boys made eternal. These are the servants. The servants in heaven are young boys. So you can understand that young boys, yes, but why young boys? I mean, have you ever thought about why young boys? Now ask any parent, when is the most beloved age for their children? That is the age that those servants are at. When they are young, they are innocent, they're smiling, they're just a joy to have around before they grow up and get mouthy. But that is the best age for, what the verse is saying, that Allah knows what makes you happy. So there is psychological reward on top of the physical reward. So those servants that come and serve the people in heaven are at the best age that is most beloved to the parents. And they will remain like that forever. So that's what we understand from that verse. Not just that they're young boys. There is more to it. There's psychological enjoyment on top of the physical enjoyment. In the same surah, Surah Al-Waqi'ah, in verse 20, Allah says, وَفَاكِهَةٍ مِمَّا يَتَخَيَّرُونَ, and fruit from what they select. That means inhabitants of heaven can have any fruit they want. Now you can understand fruit as fruit, but the deeper meaning behind fruit is the perfection of hospitality. When somebody invites you and makes biryani, now what is the difference between if you have biryani and then 6 different types of fruit and other, that means he went above and beyond to honor you as a guest. So you can understand from the fruit that it's fruit, or you can understand it's the perfection of Allah's hospitality. That if the fruit is of every kind, what about everything else? That means you can have anything you want. I mean, that's, don't take the Quran literally. There are meanings behind it. There are, it's just not fruit. It could be fruit, but there's more to it than just the word fruit. So there's always a deeper meaning, so we have to study. Because Allah said in the verse, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ, for people who have knowledge, who acquire that knowledge. That's how you can appreciate the Quran. The more knowledge you have, the more appreciation you have. Another verse in Surah Ar-Rahman, chapter 55, in the beginning of verse 54. Allah says, مُتَّكِئِينَ عَلَى فُرُشٍ بَطَائِنُهَا مِنْ إِسْتَبْرَقٍ. Again, talking about the people in heaven, that they are reclining on beds whose linings are of silk brocade. Allah is describing the lining, the inside of your jacket, the inside that nobody sees. The inside is of the best quality and most beautiful silk. He didn't tell you what the top is. He just described what the lining is. So when we work our mind, Allahu Akbar, what do you think the top and the cover of those chairs are? Now we cannot imagine heaven because it's more intricate than anything we are capable of imagining. But these are all encouragement from Allah Ta'ala, and we understand it from the verse. There are a lot of things that are not said. You have to fill in the blanks when you read those verses, and that only comes with knowledge. In a surah, Ayat al-Kursi, a surah that a verse many people know and they memorize. Allah says, وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. His kursi extends over the heavens and earth. Now, kursi is the footstool. Allah described the footstool of, not the throne, not the arsh. The footstool in front of the throne is as wide as heaven and earth. Then how big is the throne? Al-arsh. So Allah doesn't give us feed you everything. He leaves things in there that you have to use your mind to arrive at. Another one, in Surah Qaf, in chapter 50, verse 38, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا فِي سِتَّةِ أَيَّامٍ, till the end of the verse. Allah is saying that He created the heavens and earth, that means the whole universe, in 6 days. Now, nobody should understand 6 days as 6 days. Before there was a sun and earth, our day is the revolution of the earth around itself. Before there's a sun and an earth, how much is a day? So nobody should go in and argue with other people, the whole universe was created in 6 days, when they have evidence from science that says it's over millions and millions of years. What you understand from the verse is the creation of Allah was done in stages. That's what we get out of it. Not the day, not that it was 6 days, it was in 6 stages. That's what we understand from it. And as you get more knowledge, you arrive at these conclusions. Because everything that Allah created creates in stages, and that's for our benefit. It takes 9 months for a baby to develop. You cannot have 2 women pregnant for 4.5 months and have a baby. Doesn't work that way. There are progression, there are laws that Allah has set that have to pass before. That's why Sayyidina Uzair, when Allah sent him to guide Jerusalem, and he went in there and found it all ruins. It's like, I'm here, there's nobody here. And Allah didn't just revive it like that, and He could have, but that's not how Allah laws are. He made him sleep for 100 years, and in those 100, it took 100 years for that city to flourish again, and then He was ready to call them to Allah. There is progression in creation, and Allah teaches us that. Now, in another verse, Allah mentions the days as our days. In Surah As-Sajdah, chapter 32, in verse 5, Allah says, يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ ثُمَّ يَعْرُجُ إِلَيْهِ فِي يَوْمٍ كَانَ مِقْدَارُهُ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ مِمَّا تَعُدُّونَ. He arranges each matter from heaven to the earth. Then it will ascend to him in a day, that day, the extent of which is 1,000 years of those which you count. Allah added, those which you count. That means one day that the matter goes to is equal to 1,000 years from our calendar. Now, if you take, now this was revealed to the Arabs. The Arabs at the time used the lunar calendar. So the day in lunar, the year in lunar calendar is 12 months. The month is when the moon goes around the earth one time. So if you take the radius between the center of earth to the center of the moon, 2 pi r, how much distance it goes in a month, versus times 12 months, times 1,000 years, divided by the number of seconds in one day, you arrive at the speed of light. And this is from the miracles of the Quran. It's 186,000 miles per second. You get close to it because we don't know the exact measurements. And I did that for myself because I wanted to make sure. And you arrive very close to the speed of light. So you can understand from the verse that the affairs, the things that ascend from heaven and earth, they go at speed of light. They're very fast. So that's, if the more knowledge you have, the more meanings you get out of the verses. And Allah again remind you, كِتَابٌ فُصِّلَتْ آيَاتُهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. Knowledge is required. So the meanings of the Quran are very deep. But from the miracles of the Quran is each one of us understands it according to his level of knowledge. You want to have a deeper understanding? Raise your knowledge. Seek more knowledge and you'll understand it at a much higher level. So in addition to the language, knowledge is required because Allah says, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. If you don't have knowledge, you're not going to appreciate it. Sometimes we read that same verse for 20, 30 years, 40 years, and sometimes you go in, one day you go in and you study a little bit, and then a new meaning comes to your mind that you never paid attention to in 20, 30 years. It happens. With knowledge, you get more fruit out of the Quran. You have to dedicate time to study the Quran and to get knowledge in order for it to give you its fruit. It is not going to hand you the fruit like, just without effort. It takes effort. So the Quran is meant لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ, for people who search for the truth, who search for the true happiness, which is the happiness of the hereafter, who search for God and His orders. Ya Allah, what do you want from me? That's who the people who benefit from the Quran. So it requires contemplation, studying, thinking, pondering. Yes, you can read the Quran. Every letter is 10 good deeds. But that is not the extent of the Quran. That's the reward, the incentive to get you to read it. The true power behind it is when you start understanding it, contemplating it, and implementing it in your life. And that's the difference between reading it as an act of worship versus reading it, tadabbur, qira'at tadabbur. It's contemplation. You're thinking about it. It guides your life. It guides your action in life. That's when you get the fruit from it. And that's from the miracle of the Quran. Every other prophet had a miracle, but their miracle was, ended, a long time ago. You can believe it, you cannot believe it. But the Quran is a miracle till the end of time. You take it, you understand it, you implement it, Allah will raise you to be qualified to lead humanity. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم.